Jamaica, last week we witnessed the tragic twilight of the negotiator Hugh Lawson Shearer, a man who presided over a macroeconomic golden era, only to watch the post-independence honeymoon burn to ashes in the streets during the Rodney riots of 1968. Welcome back to Chapter 3 of our 9-part definitive historical countdown, In the Shadow of the Chief. This week, the Jamaican political landscape doesn't just shift, it explodes. By 1972, the deep-seated inequalities left behind by the colonial system had reached a breaking point. The masses were tired of statistics. They wanted a savior. And walking out of the political horizon came a man so magnetic, so fiercely articulate, and so grand in his vision that the people didn't just call him Prime Minister, they called him Joshua. His name was Michael Norman Manley.
My last word is for the role of leadership. First of all, the leadership of socialism must walk in humility. Humility must be humble, must be humble, must always be humble. There is no place for arrogance in the party that I lead.
Born into ultimate political royalty as the son of national hero Norman Manley, Michael didn't just inherit a party, he inherited a revolution. But Manley's vision extended far beyond the shores of Jamaica. He wanted to rewrite the rules of global capitalism, dismantle the leftovers empire, and stand shoulder to shoulder with the giants of the third world.
And I tell you as the party leader, as long as this party is in power, we intend to walk through the world on our feet and not on our knees.
In doing so, he stepped directly onto the most dangerous stage of the 20th century, the Cold War phenomenon. He would clash face to face with the United States and trigger a covert war on his own soil and watch his beautiful dream of socialism with love transform into a localized war zone. To understand the sheer magnitude of Michael Manley's rise, you have to understand that the 1972 election wasn't just a political campaign. It was a cultural and spiritual awakening. Manley was a master populist, educated at the London School of Economics under the legendary socialist thinker Harold Lasky. Manley combined elite intellectual theory with the grit of a street-tested trade union negotiator. He looked at a hurting Jamaica and realized that if he wanted to defeat the deeply entrenched JLP machine, he had to speak the language of the street. So, he abandoned the traditional stuffy British three-piece suits of his predecessors, opting instead for the casual, liberated bush jacket. More importantly, he did what no Jamaican politician had ever dared to do. He explicitly aligned his campaign with the heavily marginalized Rastafarian movement and the explosive, rebellious power of roots reggae. He adopted Delroy Wilson's hit, reggae track, Better Must Come, as his official campaign anthem, instantly connecting with the urban poor, the hustlers, and the disenfranchised. During his mass rallies, Manley would dramatically brandish a wooden walking stick given to him by the Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie. The masses, deeply rooted in biblical symbolism, saw this staff as the rod of correction. They viewed Manley not just as a politician, but as a modern-day Moses, destined to lead his people out of economic bondage. He campaigned on the radical, intoxicating slogan, "Power for the people." The strategy worked with devastating effectiveness. In 1972, the PNP swept into office in a monumental landslide, shattering Usher's administration. Michael Manley was sworn in as Jamaica's fourth Prime Minister, backed by an unprecedented mandate. Once in office, Manley didn't waste a single moment. He launched the most aggressive, wide-ranging program of social and economic reform in the history of the English-speaking Caribbean. Manley declared that his government would be guided by the philosophy of democratic socialism. To him, as he famously stated, socialism is love. The practical application of the Christian ideal that all human beings deserve equal dignity, equal opportunity, and equal protection under the law. For the first 4 years, his administration enacted structural miracles for the Jamaican working class. There was an educational revolution. Manley made education free from nursery all the way through to the University of the West Indies. For the first time in the history of Jamaica, the child of a domestic helper or a sugar worker could walk through the gates of higher academia purely based on merit, not money. His government introduced the landmark national minimum wage, mandated equal pay for women doing the same work as men, and passed the Status of Children Act, which legally abolished the cruel colonial stigma of illegitimacy for children born out of wedlock. The Bauxite Levy. In a daring move of economic nationalism, Manley looked at the massive multinational aluminum corporations exploiting Jamaica's bauxite and demanded a fair share. When they refused to renegotiate, Manley bypassed them entirely and enacted the Bauxite Levy of 1974, increasing the country's tax revenue from its own natural resources by over 600%. The funds from the Bauxite Levy were poured directly into a massive national housing trust, building thousands of affordable homes for the poor. To the masses, the promises of independence were finally coming true. But Manley's domestic triumphs were about to collide with global geopolitics. Michael Manley fundamentally believed that Jamaica could never be truly free if it remained a passive satellite of Western capitalist powers. He became a towering vocal leader in the non-aligned movement, fiercely advocating for a new international economic order that protected developing nations from exploitation. But Manley made a geopolitical move that Washington considered an unforgivable sin. He formed a profound public and ideological brotherhood with Fidel Castro and revolutionary Cuba. Jamaica is located less than 100 miles south of Cuba. In the 1970s, at the height of the Cold War, the United States viewed the Caribbean through a lens of absolute paranoia. To Richard Nixon, General Ford, and U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, Manley's warm relationship with Castro wasn't just neighborly diplomacy. It was a communist beachhead being established in America's backyard. The tension escalated to a boiling point. In 1975, when Manley publicly backed Cuba's military intervention to support the socialist government in Angola, Henry Kissinger personally flew to Jamaica, landing on independent soil, and subtly warned Manley to break his ties with Castro. Manley fiercely, proudly refused to bow. He famously told his followers that his government could not be bought and would not be told what to do. The retaliation from the West was swift, silent, and economically devastating. International foreign aid dried up overnight. Wall Street investment completely froze. The multinational bauxite companies slowed production. And the international press began running aggressive smear campaigns, painting Jamaica as a collapsing, dangerous pro-Soviet state. As the economy choked under foreign isolation, Jamaica plunged into a state of absolute domestic terror. The political landscape fractured into a hyper-violent, tribalized war zone. On one side stood Michael Manley's socialist PNP, backed by the urban working class and ideological leftists. On the other side stood the Jamaica Labour Party, now led by Manley's ultimate ideological rival, the fiercely anti-communist master strategist Edward Seaga. Seaga hammered the government, warning that Manley's policies were driving the country straight into a totalitarian Cuban-style dictatorship. What followed was a dark chapter of political tribalism, fueled by the influx of illegal, high-powered firearms. Neighborhoods in Kingston were carved into warring political garrisons. Trenchtown, Arnett Gardens, and Tivoli Gardens became fortresses where political loyalty was a matter of life and death. Manley and his supporters openly accused the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, of orchestrating a covert destabilization campaign, a strategy of economic destabilization and political violence, identical to the one that had successfully toppled Salvador Allende in Chile just years prior. The violence grew so extreme that on June 1976, Manley took the ultimate democratic gamble. He declared a nationwide state of emergency. The state of emergency and the red fence became a talking point. The 1976 state of emergency was not just a military lockdown, it was a devastating political weapon. Under its sweeping emergency powers, the security forces were authorized to detain citizens indefinitely without trial. Within days, the government turned its sights directly onto the leadership of the opposition. On June 21, 1976, Olivia Babsy Grange, a powerhouse JLP organizer and cultural activist, was arrested and detained. Just 2 days later, on June 23rd, Pernell Charles, the deputy leader of the JLP then, and a highly popular vocal senator, was intercepted by armed forces and thrown into detention. They were locked away in the Up Park Camp Military Detention Center, referred to colloquially as the Red Fence. The PNP government accused them of subversion and involvement in illegal firearm distribution, profoundly unverified. While the JLP vehemently cries foul, declaring the arrest a dictatorial move to decapitate their political machinery ahead of the upcoming election, Charles would languish behind those fences for almost a year a living symbol of how deep the political wedges had been driven into the heart of the nation. Though Manley won a resounding re-election in late 1976, the victory was hollow. The economy was in free fall. The local merchant and professional classes were fleeing the island in droves, taking their capital with them, and the country was completely broke. By 1980, Manley was out of options. Forced to turn to the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, his government was subjected to brutal austerity measures that dismantled many of his beloved social programs. The 1980 election campaign became the bloodiest in Jamaica's history, costing the lives of over 800 citizens in politically motivated street violence. Exhausted, isolated, and with an economy in ruins, the electorate spoke. In October 1980, Edward Seaga and the JLP won a crushing landslide victory. The prophet had been rejected, the socialist dream was over, and Jamaica shifted dramatically back into the capitalist orbit of the United States. Michael Manley would eventually return to power in 1989, but he was a changed, heavily sobered man. Recognizing the realities of a post-Cold War world, his second administration abandoned radical democratic socialism, embraced free market policies before health issues forced his retirement in 1992. To his critics, Manley was a reckless, flamboyant, populist whose fiery rhetoric and economic mismanagement shattered Jamaica's prosperous 1960s economy, scaring away vital foreign investment, locking up political dissidents, and dividing the nation along tribal and class lines. But to the millions who still revere his name, Michael Manley was the ultimate champion of human dignity. He gave poor black Jamaicans a profound sense of psychological liberation, proving that a small island nation could stand up and demand a seat at the global table as an absolute equal. His social reforms, from free education to maternity leave and equal pay for women, form the permanent structural floor that protects modern Jamaican society today. He was a leader who played for the highest stakes imaginable on the global chessboard. And while the empire struck back, the structural lines he drew in the sand could never be erased. Join me again next week when we will look at the Deliverer and the Reagan Alliance. Edward Seaga is up next in our ongoing series, In the Shadow of the Chief. Throughout the series, we will uncover the untold historical narratives of all of Jamaica's prime ministers, examining both their crowning achievements and their profound flaws. Our journey will ultimately culminate with the chief himself, Sir Alexander Bustamante, Jamaica's first prime minister and the foundational architect of the nation. Don't miss next week's episode. Subscribe, like, share, and I'll see you next time. Until then, one country, one vision, under God. Walk good.
Jamaica, here we come.